200. What's up? All right, it's the 18th. It's kind of the later afternoon here, so you can see kind of the silhouette of Dr. John Walsh here, and that's okay. All right, I'm doing it from my kitchen, and we've been building towards the kind of consequences, okay, of having this growing age population globally, um, nationally in the United States, and then at the community level, and then at your personal level, okay. We looked at it, how it's going to impact your parents and grandparents, okay. We looked at diseases like cancer and diabetes, diabetic heart disease, Alzheimer's disease. Um, we talked about mental health, and a big part of mental health is not only the person being impacted by the diseases, but also the people that have to care for them. And so we're going to go into an important component now that's going to directly affect you, and that would be caregiving. All right, so we're going to launch right into that. Don't forget to take your midterm. All right, Julia's been sending out lots of supportive emails trying to get you to do that. Okay, all right, so again, you should take a look at this and look at how far you've come. My God, that's amazing. You know, just amazing. So we're going to get into now some real nuts and bolts of how it impacts you individually. So we're going to do this caregiving part, and then we're going to get into everything that is the wheelhouse of our business majors, econ majors. Okay, these are really important components. Let's do caregiving right now. Okay. Um, again, my lecture is going to go right here. I'm going to blow this up because I just found this particular um, image to be kind of really compelling when I saw this, and it's just it's colloquial if you've heard about it, but it just shows you the cycle of life in terms of caregiving that happens. Um, it shows the mother with her child, and then the child with the mother. Okay, and it is a kind of a reflection of dependency, all right? And that's what caregiving is all about. So your parents have given you lots of care, lots of support, from this stage through grade school, through middle school, high school, and now in college. It's intellectual support, it's professional support now, it's emotional support and financial support. Okay, and when you got hurt or injured, they would be there to help you. Okay, that's going to be the case now that you are going to have to kick in the gear for them. Okay, and that's what this section's all about. So this is a report made by AARP. I'm sure you heard of AARP. Okay, and AARP produced this report a few years back, but they made projections into the present day and in beyond the future. Okay, like any type of analysis, you have to have a a metric that you use. Okay, and you describe that in your methodology. And so this is their kind of methodology where they were looking at specifically the caregiver support ratio. Okay, and then they define what this caregiver support ratio is. Okay, um, this is when you're going to have to kick into high gear with your parents, and what your parents are dealing with right now with your grandparents. Okay, so most of your parents are in this caregiver role. Okay, they're in this 45 to 64 years of age group, and based on this criteria, they could have slid the age groups anywhere they wanted, but they just wanted to be consistent with this measure of these are the supporters right here, okay? And these are the people age 80 and older that need the care, okay, that need the support, okay? And then they can follow this through present day and then into the future and make projections and what it's going to mean to you, all right? All righty, cool. And I had to go through this. Of course, I'm 64 right now, all right, and I had to deal with it with my mom for years. My mom passed away a few years ago. I think that was 4 years ago. She was 95 years old at the time, all right, and there was tough times for me trying to balance my children and work and my mom. Okay, so it's a significant thing. All right, so um, the study looked at 2010. All right, and that's when there were a ton of people like me. Okay, And so there were a ton of caregivers, okay, for every person that was in this defined kind of need of care group, the 80 and 80 plus, okay. You see that what happens, so many of us baby boomers are going to rifle through the system and become this high risk group that they have defined, that it's going to sharply move in 2030, in 10 years, to from 7 to 1 to 4 to 1, and in 2050 it'll be 3 to 1, and that puts a huge amount of burden on the individual. And not everybody has that 3 to 1 ratio in their family, you know. So there are a lot of people that are childless, and they fare far worse, as we'll discuss about in this article. Or if you had a single child, then if you're that person and your parents had you and only you, then there's a huge burden that's to be placed on you. Okay, and so you'll have to make decisions about that. Alrighty, so in their definition, okay, they talk about the demands for long-term services and supports. They they use that excuse me, that acronym all throughout this short article. All right, and and they talk about, you know, the transitions that are going to be happening during the next 20 years. Okay, and they're historically, we'll look at this one graph where there was this kind of flat zone. Okay, all right. But what happens is it's going to accelerate in terms of less children around, and so the as a result, there's going to be this intensified need for care. Okay, and this is what's going to happen when I am at the very tail end of the baby boomer. Believe it or not, I'm 64. Okay, and 64 in about 2 weeks. All right, and so we're all transitioning in this older age group. All right, so I'm going to be 80, you know, in 16 years. Okay, and I'm going to be part of this study, so to speak. All right, so, you know, who makes up caregivers? All right, so the backbone of caregiving is family. All right, bottom line is, you know, if you can retain it within family, it's just better. It's better emotionally, and it's better financially. But it has consequences on the person that is the caregiver, you know. So it's this balancing act. And then when we look at our discussion this week, it's cultural as well. All right. So if we look at many of the Central America and South American countries, we look all throughout the East Asian countries, there is a strong culture of familiar or filial support, where we have multiple generations that will actually live in one household, and so grandma and grandpa will care for the babies so that mom and dad go to work. All right, and then when grandma and grandpa get older, then they are cared for in the household by the babies that are now in middle school or high school. Okay? And it's also the family collective. When you can do it that way, the cost savings are enormous. Okay, but there is, you know, a kind of an independence cost that comes with that as well. You know, and then we fast forward to the, you know, the American model, and we all like our independence. You know, when I turned 18, I moved out of my house with, you know, I was living with my parents. I never looked back. I never returned home. Okay, that's the American way. You know, and we all kind of want that, but, you know, at what cost? At what cost? Okay. Luckily, I had an older brother who never got married, and was kind of slow to launch. So he lived with my mom, and that took the burden off of me. My Julie and I, we did well in life, and so when my mom passed, we let my older brother have the house, so he had a place to live in. So this is all this kind of balancing act that happens. Okay. Alrighty. So basically, 2/3 of Americans, okay, believe that their families are going to be there for these long-term support services. All right, I certainly hope so. Okay, but you know, the problem is there's this shrinking availability of family. I have two boys, right? And I think I've told you about that. And what if one of them moves away? What if they both move away? You know, we're in a global society, so that could happen. All right. And then what happens with that is we have a greater reliance on fewer family caregivers to provide these services. Okay. Um, So then we look at the burden, okay? And right here we're looking at the role the family member has, okay? So it's expanded from just coordinating some personal care issues, household chores, shopping, whatever it is, to now dealing with some fairly significant medical issues, hospitalization, and things like that, okay? Ping-ponging back and forth between skilled nursing facilities, all right? And so there's more reliance now on home care providers and assisted living facilities and things like this. Again, at a cost, at a cost. All right. Okay. So we're looking at our typical family caregiver. All right. What is the typical family caregiver right here? Okay. The average family caregiver, a 49-year-old woman. All right. If you have a family with brothers and sisters, it's always the oldest daughter. Okay. Is the typical scenario. All right. Um, and they work outside the home and they spend 20 hours a week providing unpaid care for their mother for 5 years. That is a huge burden. It's a huge burden, you know. I know we do it out of love, but it wears on you, believe me. And I was there. Like I said, I'm working at USC. Okay. I live in Laguna Niguel. Okay. My mom lived up in Monterey Park. All right. My brother had to work too. And so I found myself going like this, driving for years, trying to maintain my mom's ability to live in place. Okay. Luckily, she was in pretty good health to the bitter end, and then things kind of spiraled out of control. So yeah, so we look at the caregivers. 8 and 10 are a relative, okay, or a friend, age 50 or older. All right, so that would be me. All right. Um, then the next transition is we look for paid direct care workers. This is expensive. Okay. Um, Medicaid and Medicare only pay so much, and then it sadly is out of pocket. Okay, and there are set rules in this that I'm going to let Julia tell you about later on. But you rifle through your insurance coverage, okay, and then we had the scenario of my next door neighbor, and there are two people in their late 80s and really poor health, and they are paying $400 a day for a home health aide. $400 a day, and that goes to the company for the most part. The actual workers do not make that much money. All right, so we look at home health aides, okay, and 60% are age 45 and older. All right, so again, it's a tragedy that so much of the money goes towards paying the company and not so much the worker, because it is difficult work. Okay. Alrighty, so this kind of just goes through the transitions that are going to be happening um, over time. Okay, and it talks about the kind of work that the individuals need. We have activities of daily living. That's a real common um, acronym. Okay, so when you're dealing with a home health aide or an assisted living facility, it's going to come up. Does a person need assistance with bathing, dressing, using a toilet? All right. Um, Telephone, meals, bills, all this is just an item that gets checked in terms of what you are billed for. Okay. All righty. So then we look in terms of this concept of billing at economic models. All right. And that's what this is all about. All right. And we look at the transition, okay, that has happened, and so I'm going to show you the figures, okay, and we're going to look at individual states, and you're going to see this transition, the economic model. Initially, when I went through the system, there were so many of us caregivers around that family support was enormous, and so the actual cost to Medicaid, Medicare, and the individual was actually down, because there are a lot of us family members that did it for free. Okay, all right, so let's take a look at this right now. Okay, so we'll scroll down here. We're going to look at figure 1, and we're going to watch this transition. So this is just verbiage transitioning, watching me transition through the cycle. Okay. And we come over here and we look at this first figure right there. Okay, I'm going to get my silly face out of the way. Okay, and we're looking at the caregiver support ratio. Okay, all right, so here we are at 2020. Okay, and so a few years back, okay, there were a lot of us around to take care of my mom's generation. All right, the great generation, the greatest generation ever. Yes, my mom and my dad were World War II era people. Okay, and I was produced. Okay, reproduction uh, post World War II. That's what the baby boom's all about. Okay, so I'm percolating around here, and there's tons of us around to help. But then suddenly we become dependent. We need care, and we're watching people from my generation transition down into the situation. So now we see here the number of people, okay, that can support the individual is going down, 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 down. We're getting down to this region of 3 here, okay. Whereas up here, there were 6 people, all right? So that's going to be tough. And that means there's going to be no more reliance on institutional care. You guys, are experts at looking at this, okay? So we can look at the transition of, we know that we're looking at the projected age of 45 to 64 population US, okay, all right? And we're looking at the numbers, okay, transitioning, and we see this. Here the boomers turn 45, okay, all right. We're looking here at boomers turn to 65, and it goes on and on and on. All right, so it's the aging of America. All righty, cool. All right, so this again, looking at another one, we're looking at, we've seen this, of course, the largest or the fastest growing age group. Um, Based on definition is 80 and above, okay, and you see it zooming out of control here, okay, compared to say people that were 50 to 60 or 60 to 70, all right, so 80 and above during this time period is, which is 2030, 2040, 2050 is enormous, okay. Alrighty, so I'm not going to read through all this, but these transitions are just so dramatic. Okay, so we look at this ratio of people to help. All right, so we see it's going to be about 4.1 in 2030 to less than 3 in 2050. Okay, when I'm in that high risk group, of course, when I'm 80, I'm going to be fairly high risk. All right. Um, so I'm going to scroll down here to the very bottom, okay, and I just want you to kind of um, look at the individual states, and it's no big surprise, okay. So we see here the number of support based on young. There were a lot of young people that moved to Alaska. That's what that's all about. This during the 90s, it was boomtown, so people moved up there, and so it's just numbers, okay. And they're transitioning out, but we're going to see here there's far fewer people. But I want to look at a state like Arizona, okay. So 7.0, okay, all right, when there were a lot of young people around, my generation, but there's so much transition, and we see that they're going to be less than 2 in 2050, all right. All right, so let's look at Florida again. You see that they're better off than they're worse off than other communities, okay, because Florida is a big retirement community. A lot of people go down there and they don't have children, okay. All right, so California, um, we're a little bit off, but still not that great. So you see this transition of how many people are there to help. All right, so it's a pretty awesome table, and it's a pretty significant thing for you guys to consider, okay. All right, so we'll go back here, and we're going to go into um, an extension of the reading, okay? And this is just another way of looking at this phenomenon that I was talking about, all right? So we look at chronology of time going from 1990 to 2050, okay? We look at the number of caregivers to the number of people needing care, okay? So like I said, here I am, and there were so many of us, that me and my 2 brothers were helping and caring for my mom, that we actually took the heat off the government. Okay, so Medicare and Medicaid services were reduced for paying for caregiving because we were doing it as a family. Then it's the right thing to do. Okay. Um, Now we did not replace ourselves with a lot of children. Okay, you guys or your parents. Okay, and it's reducing in number. So now there's fewer caregivers to take care of me. Oh my gosh. Okay. And you watch me age out, and I'm, like I said, the tail end. I have an older brother. I'm going to be, like I said, 64. I have an older brother who's 74. Okay. And yeah, so this is what ends up happening. You have less than 3 people across the board population. We're not looking at individual families. We're looking across the board population. All right, and then they kind of show this right here. All right, so you need policy to take action about these long-term services and family support. All right, because of the shrinking families. So how are we going to pay for this? Okay, we were asking you the last discussion. How are we going to pay for the extensive caregiving? The close to 100 grand a year that costs for Alzheimer's care units. And then there's this, and it's not just the 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 activities of daily living like we are talking about, of just helping with the laundry or cleaning the pool, or these things that I take care of right now, but more extensive activities. And the fact that with your policy, you need to be able to, I think, to be able to tell the government, I'm doing this caregiving, document it, and I want a tax savings on this. Okay, I should get a tax deduction for the caregiving I'm doing, because if I'm doing it, then you're not having to pay through it through Medicaid or Medicare services. All right, that's just my take on it. All right, ask your parents about that. Okay, so then this right here is looking at the cultural diversity. All right, so this is a cool video right here that talks about it, short,
Enjoy some
and
breeze of
looking
the
at
people
cultural
inside of
differences. And then this right here is, again, the website that you can go to that looks at cultural differences in terms of caregiving. And it's, people transition, okay? So, and they go into culture, okay? So this culture is defined about where you came from. So I came from California, so I have a California culture. Okay, where did my mom and dad come from? They were born out here as well, so we are embedded in California culture of caregiving. Some of you have come from different parts of the country, different parts of the world. Okay, and they talk about this right here, how ethnicity impacts caregiving. All right. All right, then we get into this, okay? So we have lots of different groups, okay, that have unique needs of caregiving, right? And so when you're forming a business, you have to think about this, and when you look at family, oftentimes the kind of family that members of this part of society have, they don't have true family members that are supporting them, so they have to rely on what we call the logical family. Okay, the family of friends, family that come from their culture that help them. Okay. What else do we have? We have, as you saw, so all this course, there is this migration from farming rural communities into urban centers, because that's where the jobs are. And so as a result, there's a real problem in terms of rural caregiving. I'll never forget when I first met my wife Julia. We used to go back to her grandparents' farm. It had been in the family for a couple hundred years. It is in southern Illinois. It's a part of Illinois that's close to a city called Nashville, Mount Vernon. We'd fly into St. Louis, and then we would drive north, and we would go up to southern Illinois. And when we first got there, they were in this small little town that was next to those hubs that I talked about. Was called Hoyleton, and there were 4 churches in that town. And then there were 3 churches, and then there were 2 churches, and then there was 1 church, and that was it. It was gone. Okay, what happened? Well, my wife's parents both moved out of town. Um, my wife's mom had 3 siblings. They all went to college and moved out of town. There was nobody there to give direct support. Okay, and so it's a real issue in terms of rural United States. All right, cool. So that's today's lecture. Talk to your parents about caregiving. I'm not kidding you. You talk to them, because this is a significant role that you have, that they have, and if you can help them, it would be awesome. And there's my beautiful wife Julia. Okay, guys. So we'll see you next time.